all that I wanted to tell you. ठीक है, अभी माइक ठीक है, नहीं जाने वाला है? Okay. Same course, 7 days. Those of you who missed the earlier days can make up on those days. And if you are too impatient to wait till 25th, we have this on video. We also have it on, not only this video, but we have a previous course also recorded. And we also have audio cassettes available if you want to. You can come to our library and you can even borrow it if you want.
Dr. Vaishnav will be sitting next here, second. He's the librarian in charge. So, what do you want to say?
Well, every Thursday also I conduct a course at the temple, but I am not very sure about the next 2 Thursdays because I may not be in town. I may be going out to give the lecture somewhere else. So I may not be able to tell you exactly whether I am here this week and next week. Coming week.
There will be program.
But there will be a program nonetheless. There will be somebody else equally competent who will be taking a class. So today's course, today's lecture is on different forms of yoga. Just see how I'll just give you an idea how far we've come for those of you who've come only for the first time today. On the first day we did, does God exist? And the importance of scripture. On the second day we did, who is God? On the third day we covered, who am I? On the fourth day we covered, why do bad things happen to good people, or the law of karma and reincarnation. Then on the fifth day we covered learning to face death. Yesterday we learned what the Bhagavad Gita says about learning to face death. And today we are going to do different forms of yoga. So once you have learned that God exists, you know who is God, you know who you are. And by understanding karma, you know how you landed in the mess that you are in. Now to find out how to get out of that mess, you should know what are the different forms of yoga that are available to you. And what does the Bhagavad Gita say about the different forms of yoga? So today's lecture is to describe different forms of yoga: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, the topmost yoga, that is the path of perfection. So first and foremost, before I start off and tell you about different forms of yoga, I would like to tell you the meaning of the word yoga. Yoga comes from the root word which means yuj, that means to reunite. Yoga comes from the root word yuj, which means to reunite. That means that which helps you reunite to your original source, that which helps to reunite the spirit soul to the supreme eternal source, that helps you reunite the Jivatma with God. That is known as yoga. The same meaning as religion. What does religion mean? Religion comes from the root word religare, the Latin root word religare. That means to reunite. Religare also means to reunite. So religion means to reunite the living entity with its original source. Yoga also means to reunite, that is to reunite the living entity with its original source. So that which helps you to reunite with God is termed as yoga. And there are many different forms of yoga. Now before we go on to different forms of yoga, first and foremost, I'd like to give you an idea about what is the goal of life. This is very, very, very important. The goal of life is bhakti. Reunion with God means to be reunited with God in transcendental loving faith. To be reunited with God in love, that is the goal of life. But sometimes people are under the illusion that to be reunited with God is not really the goal of life, but to be liberated and to become God is the goal of life. This is sometimes the illusion that people are under. So we must know what is liberation. We should understand what is moksha. Because everybody is under the impression that moksha is the goal of life. Today you just meet an average Indian and you ask him what is the goal of life, what do you want most in life? He'll say, after everything I have obtained in life, I would like to have moksha, I would like to be mukt, I would like to have mukti. So he will think that mukti is the goal of life. But mukti is not the goal of life. Mukti is just the qualification for the goal of life. In fact, you cannot be united with God in transcendental loving faith if you have not simultaneously acquired liberation. So one who has acquired love of God has also acquired liberation. But for him, liberation is just one of the byproducts on the way to acquiring love of God. Moksha or liberation is a qualification for acquiring bhakti. Try to understand this, that moksha is not the goal of life. Actually, in the Vedic scriptures, there are defined four main purusharths. So what are these four main purusharths? You have dharma, artha, kama and moksha. So what do we mean by these four purusharths? What do we mean by dharma, artha, kama and moksha? First and foremost, the Vedic scriptures enjoin that you must perform dharma. Do your dharma. What do you mean by dharma? Dharma means right conduct. What do you mean by right conduct? That means regardless of what sphere of life you are placed in, regardless of what profession you are placed in, regardless of what field you are in, you should perform that work perfectly to your best ability. If you are a doctor, be the best doctor. If you are an engineer, be the best engineer that you can be. If you are a lawyer, try to be the best lawyer that you can be, and simultaneously you fulfill your duties and obligations towards everybody. This is known as dharma. Because dharma means that which is intrinsic in you. For example, what is the dharma of fire, of wood? The dharma of wood is to burn, because fire is intrinsic in the wood. So also in each of us there is a particular dharma, which is the dharma of the body that we are in. And that dharma, to perform that dharma, is considered to be an essential step towards attaining the other things in life. So first of all, do your job well, have right conduct, and having right conduct, do your job as perfectly as possible. So what happens? If you do your job as well as possible, if you perform in your profession as well as possible, after some time you start thinking that, well, now I'm a very good doctor, I'm a good engineer, I'm a good manager, or I'm a good lawyer, or whatever you're doing I'm very good at. Now that I'm good at what I'm doing, it's about time that I also started acquiring some money for what I was doing. I must also get some returns for what I'm doing. Not only am I behaving in a perfect way, not only am I having right conduct, not only am I doing well in my profession, but now I should get some returns for what I'm doing. That is the meaning of artha. So one first performs dharma, the right conduct. You try to be good at what you're doing. And then eventually when you're good at what you're doing, you're not satisfied. You're not satisfied with being good at what you're doing. You say, it's fine, I'm good at what I'm doing, but now I must have money. Now you must have artha. So after you perform dharma, the next stage is you aspire for artha. You want to acquire as much money as possible. Then you keep on acquiring money, more and more artha. And then finally, after acquiring a lot of money, you start scratching your head. Okay, fine, I'm good at what I'm doing, and now I'm acquiring a whole lot of money, and I'm working very hard, I'm getting a lot of money. But what's the use of all this money if I don't enjoy it? What's the use of acquiring all this artha? What's the use of acquiring all this money if I can't enjoy it in my lifetime? I can't take it with me. Therefore, I should now enjoy that wealth as much as possible. So you start off with right conduct, that is dharma. You go on to acquiring wealth, which is artha. And when you have acquired wealth, then you start thinking that what is the use of that wealth if I cannot enjoy myself? So you use that wealth to try to enjoy yourself with your material senses. That is known as kama. So you start with dharma, that is doing your job well, doing your profession well, acting with right conduct, right responsibility, performing all your duties. When that doesn't satisfy you, you want wealth. When you have acquired wealth, that doesn't satisfy you, you want to enjoy that wealth, that is kama. And finally, when you have discovered, much to your misery, that trying to enjoy yourself with your senses in this world cannot bring you happiness, when you have discovered at long last, through bitter experience, that no matter how much you are trying to enjoy yourself with your wealth, you are simply not able to enjoy yourself with your wealth, because it brings you only unhappiness. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna very clearly says, he says, Vishaya Indriya Samyogad Yat Tadagre Amritopamam Pariname Vishamiva Yat Sukham Rajasam Smritam. That those pleasures which are actually brought about by the union of the senses with their objects, in the beginning they taste like nectar. So when you enjoy yourself with your senses, in the beginning it's like nectar. But he says in the end it's like poison. So in the beginning when you enjoy yourself with your senses, when you try kama, it seems wonderful. But in the end, it is like poison. That is the nature of happiness of the senses. Therefore Krishna has said in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Yehi samsparshajab hoga dukkhayono yuevate adi antavanta kaunteya natesu ramate buddha. That one who is wise, a wise man does not engage himself in pleasures of the senses because he knows they have a beginning and an end and they are the source of misery. So you start with dharma, you start with doing your job well, performing right conduct, fulfilling your responsibilities in society. That doesn't satisfy you, so you want wealth. You acquire that wealth. When you acquire that wealth, that doesn't satisfy you, so you want to enjoy that wealth. So you want to have kama, you want to enjoy with your senses. And you use that money to enjoy with your senses. When you enjoy with your senses, you discover to your bitter unhappiness that you cannot enjoy yourself with your senses because in the beginning it's like nectar, in the end it turns out to be like poison. So you say, forget it, I don't want all this stuff. These worldly things, they don't give me pleasure, they only give me pain. So now what I should be doing is that now I should try for liberation. I should try to be mukt. I should aspire for moksha. So you start with dharma, doing right duty. You acquire wealth, that is artha. Then you try to enjoy yourself in this world, that is kama. When you are frustrated in enjoyment in this world, then finally you say, I want moksha or I want mukti. But beyond dharma, artha, kama and moksha, there is what is known as a pancham purusharth. And this pancham purusharth is actually the goal of life. And this pancham purusharth which we should all strive for is love. Love of God. Of course you are all eternal. But nityo nityanam chetanas chetnanam. There is, although you are all eternal, there is a supreme eternal. Although you are all conscious, there is a supreme consciousness. Eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman. There is one person who is maintaining everybody. Tam atmastham yen upashanti dhiras. Tesham shanti shashvata netrasham. And until you learn to develop love by which you can see that person situated in the hearts of all living beings, only then you will know peace. So the goal of life is to attain love of God. And moksha is a qualification for obtaining love of God. Just like if you want to join medical college, you have to pass your 12th standard. You have to do your pre-medical studies. If you don't do well in your pre-medical, you are not given admission to medical college. So also if you want to join engineering college, you have to qualify before you join engineering college. So also if you want to attain bhakti, moksha or mukti is simply one of the qualifications for attaining bhakti. It is not the end. Mukti is not the end. Mukti is the beginning of love of God. You begin to have genuine love of God only when you have mukti. So bhakti is obtained by those who have mukti. And if you have not attained bhakti, although you have acquired mukti, you lose that liberation. This is the uniqueness of the process. That if you should somehow or the other reach that position where you are liberated and you don't progress, you fall down. Because all forms of yoga except bhakti yoga take you up to moksha. Karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, all of them are actually meant to take you to bhakti. But if you do not use them to take you to bhakti and you stop short at moksha, you will fall down. This is the opinion of the Bhagavad Gita. This is the opinion of the Bhagavatam. This is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where actually you see Brahma speaking to the Lord. He says, Ye anya aravindaksha vimuktamaninas tvai ashtabhavad avishuddha buddhaya aruya krichrena parampada tata patanti adho anadritam yusmadangraya. He says, O lotus-eyed Lord, there are some who with great austerities and difficulty of performing spiritual practices, they eventually obtain the parampadam, that is, they obtain moksha. But because their minds are polluted and they do not take shelter of your lotus feet in love and devotion, what happens to them? They fall down from that path. Therefore, an atheist may also obtain moksha. A man who thinks that he is God may also obtain moksha, but he cannot maintain that position because he is not taking the shelter of God. Because he does not attain bhakti, he comes down again. So it's very important at the outset for me to make clear to you that the goal of life is bhakti, and all yoga should eventually lead to bhakti. But on the path to bhakti, moksha is just one of the stages. It is one of the qualifications for finally attaining bhakti. Can you have the next slide? Now, first and foremost, I would like to cover the first form of yoga, which is known as Karma Yoga. Now, please understand Karma Yoga very well, because very few people have understood Karma Yoga. What you may say? Few people have understood Karma Yoga. I have understood Karma Yoga. Everybody I know has understood Karma Yoga. In actual fact, every Indian imagines that he is a Karma Yogi. You meet any Indian on the street and you ask him, he'll say, oh, Karma Yoga. I have been doing Karma Yoga all my life. I have been doing Karma Yoga all my life. But if India is such a wonderful nation of Karma Yogis, why are we in the mess that we are in? It's because nobody has understood Karma Yoga. So try to understand what is Karma Yoga. But before we understand what is Karma Yoga, we must understand what precedes Karma Yoga. We must understand what is Karma Kand. We should also understand what is Karma Mimamsa. Karma Mimamsa is one school of philosophy. Karma Kand is another school of philosophy, also contained in Vedic literature. And finally you have Karma Yoga, which is actually mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita and recommended by Lord Krishna. So, what is the Karma Mimamsa? Today when you meet somebody and you ask them that, will you join me for a lecture? Will you join me coming to the temple? Oh, you are a bhakti yogi, that means you're a little loose here to take to the path of devotion. I am a karma yogi, I am working very hard, you just go and do your thing, I'll just keep doing mine. There's no need to worship God. I've been working very hard all my life, and since I am working, work is worship, they will tell you. That work is worship, and since I am working all the time, that is my worship. I don't need to come and see God. I don't need God. I am just working all the time, and since work is worship, I have no need of God. I just do my work and that's it. That is Karma Yoga. That is nonsense. It's not Karma Yoga. That is known as Karma Mimamsa philosophy. Karma Mimamsa philosophy states that you don't need to worship God. What do you need a God for anyway? You just have to perform your work. And if you perform your work, you are going to get your result. This is what Karma Mimamsa philosophy propounds. It says there is no need of God in the universe. There is no need for you to approach anybody whom you call God. No need to perform worship, no need to perform sacrifice. There is no need to even think of God. You just do your work and do it perfectly. And if you do your work perfectly, nobody can stop you from getting the fruit of that work. The result has to come. You work very hard and that result must come to you. You don't need to ask anybody or pray to anybody. After all, even if you pray to somebody, don't you have to work? It's just a trick that they're playing on you. That you work hard and then pray to somebody. When you get something, you think, oh, that's been given by God. Actually, it's been got by your own work. So you don't need to worship God. Simply do your work. And if you do your work, the fruit will come to you. The result will come to you automatically. This is Karma Mimamsa philosophy. And this is what people foolishly imagine to be Karma Yoga. This is not Karma Yoga by any stretch of imagination. Even if you take hallucinatory drugs and read the Bhagavad Gita, you will quickly realize this is not what Krishna is saying. Krishna is not saying this. In fact, he is arguing against Karma Mimamsa philosophy. Karma Mimamsa philosophy says there is no need of God. You simply work, you will get the result. But common sense must tell you that's not true. Because so many times we do our work and we don't get the result. You work hard in your profession or in your job or at a particular piece of work, and although you put body and soul in that work that you've done, you don't get the fruit. As a doctor, I can tell you that many times the same treatment is given to two patients with the same disease. There is no difference between the two patients. Both of them, you are giving them the same treatment. But one patient recovers and the other patient does not recover. So if Karma Mimamsa says that all you have to do is to do your work and the result will automatically come to you, then why is it that when you perform this work, sometimes you get the result, sometimes you don't get the result? No matter if you are doing that work perfectly each time, you don't get the same result every time. Sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not successful. So obviously, the fruit is not dependent only on your work. There is some other factor which is responsible for seeing that the result of your work comes to you. There's some other factor which determines whether your work is successful or not. So this is Karma Mimamsa philosophy, which tries to argue that you only work and automatically you'll get the result. But a progression from Karma Mimamsa philosophy is called the Karma Kanda philosophy. Karma Kanda philosophy says very clearly that it's not sufficient to simply work and imagine that you'll get the fruit, because it doesn't always work out like that. You do your job and so many times, no matter how well you've done it, you don't get the result, because there is a controller. And that controller who watches over what you're doing, he finally sanctions or decides whether you should be given the fruit of your work or not. And when you appease that controller by means of sacrifice, by performing a ceremony to remember him and propitiate him, only then will he see that the result of your work will be made available to you. So it is not sufficient to only work. Of course you have to work, nobody can stop working. You cannot even maintain your body if you do not work. This is what Krishna says. But you not only work into working, you also perform a sacrifice or a ceremony to propitiate the Creator, who will see to it that the fruits will be made available to you. This is the philosophy of Kanda, that not only duty but also perform sacrifice along with your duty. So this is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. It's mentioned in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, he says, Annat bhavanti bhutani parjanyo anna sambhava yagnat bhavati parjanyo yagna karma samudbhava. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, according to this Karma Kanda philosophy, everybody is maintained by grain. You're alive today because of grain, because grain that springs forth from the earth nourishes your body, that's why you're alive. So he says, Annat bhavanti bhutani. Actually, by eating this grain, all living entities maintain their bodies. Then he says, Parjanyo anna sambhava. Because of rainfall that comes from the heavens, because rain falls from heaven, eventually those grains grow. If there's no rain, there is no grain. So you must have rainfall, because without rainfall, you cannot have that grain growing. And he says, Yagnat bhavati parjanyo. It's when you perform sacrifice to propitiate the controller who's in charge of the rain, and then only you get that rain. So you have to perform sacrifice. That sacrifice appeases or propitiates that controller who's in charge of rainfall, and that controller gives you that rainfall, and that rainfall produces that grain which you eat and maintain your body. And yet he says, Yagna karma samudbhava. He says it's not enough to perform sacrifice, you must also work. And how must you work? It is mentioned further ahead. That karma brahmodbhavam viddhi. That this karma, what activities you have to perform, they mention in the scriptures. So first you have to perform your work as mentioned in the scripture. Then you have to perform sacrifice. And by the performance of your work and by the performance of sacrifice, by which you propitiate the controller, you get rainfall. This rainfall brings forth grain from the earth. That grain nourishes you. So in this way, by nourishing the controller nourishes you. That the demigods are actually nourished by the sacrifice that you perform. And the demigods in turn nourish you by giving you rainfall, which gives you grain, which in turn is responsible for maintaining you. So this is Karma Kanda philosophy. So Karma Mimamsa says there's no need to pray to anybody, no need for sacrifice. All you have to do is work hard and the results will come automatically. Then you have Karma Kanda philosophy, which says that yes, do your work, no doubt. But in spite of doing your work, you may not be successful. Therefore, you propitiate the controller in charge of that particular department by performance of sacrifice, and being appeased and propitiated, he will now reward you. So this is Karma Kanda philosophy. But Krishna's philosophy of Karma Yoga, transcends both these philosophies completely. Krishna has never said that keep on working and the result will come to you anyway. Neither has Krishna said that you work and after you work you perform that sacrifice by which you will propitiate the demigods. That's not what Krishna says. Krishna gives you a completely different perspective on work. He says that that work that you are doing itself can help to reunite you with your Creator. That very work that you are doing work for the sake of maintaining this body. But Krishna says you need not do that. He says that very work that you are doing can be used as an instrument to reunite you with God. That work that you are doing can reunite you with God. How? Because Krishna says, he says in the Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter, Yagnarthat karmanon yatra loko yam karma bandhana tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sanga samachara. He says all activity that you do must itself be a sacrifice. It's not that you perform your work thinking of your fruit that you are going to get, and after you finish your work you do a havan to remember God. Krishna says that the very work that you are doing, that very activity that you are performing should be performed in such a manner that you are reminded of God. That every action that you are performing must help you remember God. That means that work must be itself a sacrifice. There is no differentiation between work and sacrifice as in karma kand. This work that you are performing is itself a sacrifice which helps you to remember God. So this is the difference between the 3 forms of philosophy. Karma Mimamsa says there is no need to remember God, just keep on working and the results will come to you. Karma Kand says no, if you keep on working like that you don't always get the fruit. So what you do is you work hard, and after working hard you perform a ceremony or a sacrifice or a havan by which you propitiate the controller, and then you will get the fruit. And Krishna says that that very activity that you are performing, should not be performed for the sake of acquiring fruit, but it should be performed for the sake of helping you to reunite with God. That is the difference between what Krishna says, what Karma Kanda says, and what Karma Mimamsa says. Now what is the meaning of sacrifice? Sacrifice means using your senses, using your working senses in such a manner that you remember God. Using your working senses in a manner so as to remember God is termed as sacrifice. And when you do your work in such a manner that you remember God at all times, that is sacrifice. Therefore Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Chetasa sarva karmani mai sanyasya matpara buddhi yogam upashrita mat chitta satatam bhava mat chitta sarva durgani mat prasada tarishyasi atho chetvam ahankaran nasroshasi vinangshasi. He says, always think of me when you are working. Be completely absorbed in me when you are working. Unite your intelligence with me when you are working, and take shelter of me when you are working. Then he says, in this way, by depending on me in all your activities, if you depend on me in all your activities, you will cross over all the obstacles in life by my grace. If you think of me constantly in all your activities, you will cross over all the obstacles in life by my grace. But if you think that you are doing it, you are finished. Atho chetvam ahankaran nasroshasi vinangshasi. If you think you are doing it, you are finished. But you understand that you are doing nothing, that I am doing everything for you because you are depending on me, because you are surrendering to me, because you are taking shelter of me, because you are depending on me in the work that you are doing. Therefore you will cross over all obstacles because I will help you cross over all the obstacles. But if you think that you are crossing over the obstacles, if you think that you are doing anything, then you will be completely finished. Nashroshasi vinangshasi. So the idea of Karma Yoga means learning to work so that you are remembering God at all times, learning to depend on God in your work at all times, so that by constantly remembering God, by constantly thinking of God, you will depend on Him completely and you will acquire love of God. So Karma Yoga means helping you to work as a sacrifice so that you develop love of God. So work should be done to help you develop bhakti. So Karma Yoga is that work that is performed so that you develop bhakti. As Krishna says, Never imagine that you are doing it. Always understand that I am doing it. Because the illusion is constantly there that I am doing this, I am doing this. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Prakriti kriyamanani gune karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. That the bewildered living entity, he imagines himself the doer of activities which are performed by material nature herself. That material nature is performing those activities under the directions of God, and you foolish creature are imagining the